I want you to think about someone who hurt you, someone whose words cut so deep that you still feel the wound when you wake up at 3 in the morning, someone whose actions left a mark on your identity that you have been carrying around like a backpack full of stones, someone who made you question your worth, your value, your place in this world. I want you to think about that person right now, because the reason we are here today is not to talk about them. We are here to talk about you. You see, most people spend the majority of their lives in a state of reaction. They wake up in the morning, and before they even open their eyes, their brain has already begun replaying yesterday. It has already begun rehearsing the pain. It has already started activating the same neural networks that were activated the last time someone let them down, betrayed them, dismissed them, or abandoned them. And when those neural pathways fire, the body releases the same chemistry, the same stress hormones, the same cortisol, the same adrenaline, and within the first few minutes of waking up, you are already living in the past. You are already a victim of something that happened yesterday, last week, last year, maybe even a decade ago. Now, here's what I want you to understand at a biological level, at a neurological level, at the deepest level of your existence. When you keep returning to the memory of someone who hurt you, when you keep reliving what they said, what they did, how they made you feel, you are not just remembering it, you are recreating it. You are literally, physically, chemically recreating that experience inside your body. The brain does not know the difference between something that is happening right now in your environment and something that you are vividly imagining or remembering. The same neurons fire, the same proteins are released, the same physiological cascade unfolds inside you, which means every single time you think about what they did to you, your body experiences it as if it is happening again, right now, in this moment. So who is truly hurting you? Think about that. Who is causing you pain right now? Is it the person who wronged you 5 years ago, who has since moved on with their life, who is probably not thinking about you at all, who is living their days without a second thought about the damage they caused? Or is it you? Is it your own mind, your own nervous system, your own habitual patterns of thought that are generating the suffering you are experiencing in this present moment? Because if we are going to be honest with each other today, and that is exactly what we are going to be, we have to acknowledge that a great deal of the pain we carry is not being inflicted upon us by anyone in our current reality. It is being self-generated. It is a program running in the background of our consciousness that we have never had the courage or the knowledge to examine, to question, and ultimately to override. And that is what today is about. Today is about giving you the knowledge, the framework, and the understanding of how to move from being a person who is defined by what was done to them to becoming a person who is liberated by the awareness of who they truly are. Because you are not your wounds. You are not the sum total of every betrayal and every disappointment you have experienced. You are something so much greater than that, and the work we are doing together today is about helping you remember that. The first thing I want to talk about is understanding the anatomy of a reaction, because before we can transform anything, we have to understand the mechanism. We have to look under the hood. We have to understand what is actually happening inside us when someone hurts us, because if we do not understand the biology of our own suffering, we will never have the clarity to choose something different. When someone says something cruel to you, when someone betrays your trust, when someone abandons you or humiliates you or disrespects you, your amygdala, the emotional center of your brain, lights up like a fire alarm. It sends a signal to your hypothalamus, which immediately begins orchestrating a hormonal response. Your adrenal glands pump stress chemicals into your bloodstream. Your heart rate increases. Your muscles tense. Your digestive system shuts down. Your immune system is suppressed. Every resource your body has is redirected toward one singular purpose: survival. You are in a threat response. You are in a state of emergency. Now, that response is not wrong. That response is ancient. That response kept your ancestors alive when the threats they faced were genuinely life-threatening. But here's the challenge we face in the modern world. Your nervous system does not distinguish between a lion chasing you through a field and your coworker undermining you in a meeting. It does not distinguish between a physical predator and an emotional betrayal. The threat is a threat. The alarm is the alarm. And the chemistry is the same. So your body goes into this state of emergency, and in that state, your thinking narrows. Your perception contracts. You lose access to the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term thinking, for compassion, for creativity, for reason. You become reactive, you become impulsive, and in that contracted state of consciousness, you cannot see clearly, you cannot think with wisdom, you cannot access the deeper layers of who you are. You are simply a survival machine responding to a perceived threat. And here is where it gets interesting. Because the human brain is not just reactive, it is also predictive. It is a pattern recognition organ, and every time you have an experience of being hurt, it logs that experience, it maps it, it files it away, and the next time something remotely similar occurs, it does not wait for the full situation to develop before sounding the alarm. It sees the first hint of a familiar pattern, and it immediately begins to prepare you for the pain it believes is coming. Your brain starts predicting the past. It starts anticipating suffering based on what it has already experienced, and so you begin to move through your life with this defensive posture, with these walls up, expecting the worst, bracing for impact, interpreting neutral interactions through the lens of your previous wounds. This is why the same patterns keep appearing in your life. This is why you keep attracting the same types of people. This is why you keep finding yourself in the same kinds of situations. Not because you are cursed, not because the universe is working against you, but because your nervous system has been trained, has been conditioned to perceive reality in a very specific way. And what you perceive, you believe. And what you believe, you experience. And what you experience, you perceive. It is a closed loop, and we are going to break that loop today. The first way to handle people who hurt you is to stop making their behavior about your identity. This is one of the most profound shifts a human being can make. When someone treats you poorly, when someone disrespects you, dismisses you, deceives you, the immediate interpretation that the wounded mind makes is that this tells me something about who I am. If they left me, I must not be worthy of staying. If they lied to me, I must not have been important enough for the truth. If they hurt me, there must be something about me that invites pain. This is the internalization of external behavior, and it is one of the most destructive cognitive habits a person can develop. Here's the truth that science and spirituality both converge on. Every single behavior that a person exhibits is a direct expression of their internal state. Full stop. The way someone treats you is a perfect reflection of the relationship they have with themselves. People who are at peace do not deliberately wound others. People who are full do not take from others. People who are secure do not manipulate or control or betray. The harm that was done to you was done by a person who was operating from a state of lack, of fear, of unresolved pain, of disconnection from their own deeper nature. Their behavior was not a verdict on your worth, it was a testimony to their suffering. When you truly understand this, not just intellectually, but at the level of deep knowing, something extraordinary begins to happen. The story changes. The narrative that you have been living in begins to shift. Instead of the story being I was hurt because something is wrong with me, the story becomes I was in the path of someone who had not yet done the work on themselves. And those are radically different stories with radically different implications for how you move forward. Now, I'm not asking you to excuse what was done to you. I'm not asking you to minimize it or pretend it did not hurt. It did hurt. The pain was real. The impact was real. What I'm asking you to do is to stop allowing that pain to write the story of who you are, because your identity is not a wound. Your identity is a consciousness, a field of intelligence that existed before this person entered your life and that will continue to exist long after they are gone. And the more clearly you see that their behavior was about their own internal reality and not about your fundamental worth, the less power that behavior has to define you. This requires a practice. It requires you, in the moments when you feel that familiar contraction of shame or inadequacy, to pause, to breathe, to ask yourself a very important question. Whose truth is this? Is this my truth about myself? Or is this someone else's pain being projected onto me? Is this an accurate reflection of who I am? Or is this the behavior of a person who was wounded, who was limited, who was operating from the lowest version of themselves? And when you begin to ask that question consistently, with genuine curiosity and openness, you will begin to notice that the beliefs you have been carrying about yourself are not yours. They are inherited, they are absorbed, they are the residue of other people's unresolved experiences, and you have the power to return them. The second way to handle people who hurt you is through the radical practice of emotional alchemy. Now, this is not a metaphor, this is not a spiritual cliché, this is a description of an actual neurobiological process that is available to every single human being alive. Emotional alchemy is the ability to take the raw energy of pain, of anger, of grief, of betrayal, and consciously transform it into something that elevates rather than diminishes you. Here is the science behind it. Emotions are not just feelings. They are not just psychological experiences. They are electrochemical signals. They are information moving through your body. Every emotion has a vibrational quality, a frequency, a specific signature that your cells respond to. Fear contracts, grief contracts, anger, though it feels powerful, is ultimately a contracting energy. It narrows your field, it reduces your possibilities, it locks you into a binary perception of the world, threat and non-threat, enemy and ally, safe and unsafe. But there are also expanding emotions. There is gratitude, which research shows produces a coherent heart rhythm that influences every system in your body. There is love, which generates a measurable electromagnetic field that extends beyond the boundaries of your skin. There is awe, which opens the mind to possibilities that cannot be accessed from within the contracted state of survival. These are not just nice feelings. They are physiological states that literally change the chemistry of your body, the function of your brain, the expression of your genes. Now the question is, how do you get from the contracted state of pain and anger to the expanded state of love and possibility? Because I know someone out there is thinking, you want me to just feel grateful for the person who hurt me? You want me to generate love for someone who betrayed me? And I want to acknowledge that reaction because it is completely understandable. In fact, it is the reaction of a brain that has been conditioned by the very patterns we are working to change. The pathway from contraction to expansion does not begin with loving the person who hurt you. It begins with something much more fundamental. It begins with getting honest about what emotion you are actually carrying. Most people who have been hurt are walking around with anger on the surface, but underneath that anger is fear. Underneath that fear is grief. And underneath that grief, at the very core, is love. It is the love that was given and not received. It is the love that was extended in trust and was violated. It is the love that you are still capable of, even after everything you have been through. And when you can find that core of love that lives beneath all the layers of protection and defense, you have found the seed of your transformation. The practice of emotional alchemy involves sitting with the emotion, not performing it, not expressing it at someone, not repressing it or medicating it away. Actually sitting with it in your body, with your breath, and saying to yourself, I am going to feel this fully, and I am not going to be destroyed by it. Because the reason we run from difficult emotions, the reason we distract and numb and escape, is because some part of us believes that if we actually feel this fully, it will annihilate us, it will overwhelm us, it will be too much. But that is a lie. That is the lie of the survival mind. The truth is that every emotion, when you breathe through it, when you stay present with it, when you allow it to move through your body without identifying with it, every emotion has a natural arc. It rises, it peaks, and it passes. What does not pass is the emotion that you do not allow yourself to feel. What persists is the emotion that you push down, that you medicate, that you perform instead of process. The suppressed emotion does not go away. It goes inward. It settles into your tissues. It becomes chronic tension in your shoulders, tightness in your chest, shallow breathing, disrupted sleep, a persistent low-grade sense of dread or sadness that you cannot quite locate or explain. The body keeps the score, as they say, and the only way to release what the body is holding is to complete the emotional circuit, to feel it, breathe through it, and let it move. And when you do that, when you allow the emotion to complete its cycle, something extraordinary happens on the other side. There is a clarity, there is a spaciousness, there is a sense of energy moving through you that was previously blocked. And from that clearer, more spacious place, you can begin to ask what this experience is asking you to become, not what was done to you, but who you are being called to evolve into through this experience. Because every wound, every betrayal, every loss, every disappointment carries within it a seed of expansion if you are willing to look for it. The third way to handle people who hurt you is to understand the difference between forgiveness and acceptance, because these two concepts have been so conflated in our culture that many people refuse both because they misunderstand what they are actually being asked to do. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to the person who hurt you. Forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself. Forgiveness does not mean that what they did was acceptable. It does not mean you are pretending the harm did not occur. It does not mean you are welcoming them back into your life or giving them access to your energy or your heart. Forgiveness means you are choosing to no longer allow what they did to determine your state of being. Forgiveness is the decision to stop letting someone who is absent from your present moment have authority over your inner world. Think about what it costs you to carry unforgiveness. Think about what it requires of your nervous system to maintain that state of grievance. Every time you rehearse the story of what was done to you, your body goes back into that stress response. Every time you hold on to the anger, the resentment, the desire for justice or revenge, you are keeping yourself in a chronic state of biological stress. And chronic stress, as we know from decades of research, is one of the most damaging things you can do to a human body. It suppresses the immune system, it accelerates cellular aging, it elevates inflammation throughout the body, it disrupts every regulatory system your biology depends on. So when you choose not to forgive, you are not punishing the person who hurt you. They have moved on. They are not lying awake at night experiencing the physiological consequences of your unforgiveness. You are. You are the one paying the price biologically, neurologically, emotionally, spiritually. You are the one who wakes up with the weight of it. You are the one whose life is being contracted by the refusal to release. Now, forgiveness is not always a single decision. It is often a practice. It is something you return to again and again, because the mind has a way of rehearsing the grievance when you are not paying attention. And every time you catch yourself back in the story, you have another opportunity, another moment of choice, another chance to say, I am choosing right now to take my energy back from this. I am choosing to invest my attention, my consciousness, my creative energy in something that is building my future, rather than something that is anchoring me to a past I cannot change. And here's something I want you to really take in. Forgiveness becomes significantly easier when you understand the nature of the person who hurt you at the deepest level. When you can see that every person who has ever harmed another human being did so from a state of disconnection from their own divine nature, from their own awareness of what they truly are, you begin to see them not just as a perpetrator, but as a person who was themselves lost, themselves in pain, themselves operating from the contracted, fearful, survival-driven version of a self that did not know any better or was not capable of more in that moment. This does not excuse the behavior, but it does contextualize it. It places it in a framework of human limitation and suffering that allows you to extend something beyond resentment, not necessarily warmth, not necessarily trust, but at minimum, the recognition that this person was fighting their own internal war, and you happen to be in the way of their shrapnel. Acceptance, on the other hand, is a separate but equally important practice. Acceptance means acknowledging what happened exactly as it happened, without resistance, without negotiation, without the exhausting mental gymnastics of trying to rewrite the past or understand the incomprehensible. The human mind has a deeply painful relationship with reality when reality is not what it wanted. We keep asking why. We keep running the scenario forward and backward, trying to find the version of events where it did not have to happen this way. We keep searching for the alternate timeline. And every moment we spend in that search is a moment we are not spending in the actual present, building the actual future that is available to us. Acceptance is not resignation. Acceptance does not mean you wanted this to happen or that you are glad it did. Acceptance means you are acknowledging the simple, irreducible truth that it did happen, that it is now part of the landscape of your life, and that your energy is best spent not in fighting the reality of it, but in deciding what you are going to do with it. Because when you accept what happened, fully and without resistance, you stop fighting the past, and you free up an enormous amount of energy that was previously tied up in that fight. And that energy, that life force, is available to be directed towards something new. The fourth way to handle people who hurt you is to use the experience as a laboratory for self-discovery. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive of everything I am sharing with you today, and I want you to stay with me because this is where the real transformation lives. Every person who enters your life, including and especially the ones who cause you pain, is reflecting something back to you. Now, before you shut that door, before your mind jumps to the conclusion that I am saying you attracted or deserved what happened to you, let me be very clear. I am not saying that. I'm not saying you invited harm or that the universe punished you or that somehow your vibration magnetized someone else's cruelty into your life. That interpretation is reductive, and it is not what I mean. What I mean is this. The degree of pain that another person's behavior causes you is always proportional to the degree to which that behavior activates an existing wound within you. If someone calls you stupid and you have a deeply established sense of your own intelligence that is grounded in your genuine experience of your own mind, that insult bounces off. It does not penetrate. You might feel momentarily annoyed or dismissive, but it does not shatter you. It does not keep you awake at night. It does not replay in your mind for days or weeks. But if someone calls you stupid and you are already carrying an old, deep, unexamined belief in your own inadequacy, that word lands like a match in a field of dry grass, because it is not just encountering your present moment self. It is reaching all the way back through time and touching every moment in your history where someone made you feel small, where you failed at something important, where you were compared unfavorably to others, where you internalized the message that you were not enough. The present insult becomes the delivery mechanism for all of that stored pain. And what you experience is not just the sting of one thoughtless comment. You are experiencing the accumulated weight of every similar wound you have never fully healed. This is why self-examination is so critical, not self-blame. Self-examination, the willingness to ask, why did that hurt as much as it did? What does the intensity of my reaction tell me about what I am carrying? What belief about myself was this experience confirming, and is that belief actually true? Because when you can trace the pain back to its origin, when you can find the root of the wound rather than just managing the symptoms on the surface, you have found the thing that actually needs to be healed. And once you find it, you can work with it. You can question it. You can examine the evidence for and against it. You can decide, consciously and deliberately, whether you want to continue operating as though it is true. This is the extraordinary gift hidden inside every painful experience. Every person who hurts you is, in a strange and paradoxical way, showing you exactly where your consciousness needs your attention. They are pointing, with a very blunt instrument, at the places within you that are still governed by old programming, old stories, old decisions you made about yourself and about the world at a time when you did not have the wisdom or the perspective you have now. And every one of those places is an opportunity to investigate, to question, to release, and ultimately to reclaim a part of yourself that has been held hostage by a belief that was never yours to begin with. Now, this work is not easy. It requires a level of self-honesty that most people actively avoid because it is uncomfortable. It requires you to look at yourself without the protective narrative of pure victimhood. And that can feel threatening, because the victim narrative, as painful as it is, provides something. It provides clarity. It provides a simple story with a clear protagonist and a clear antagonist. It provides the comfort of knowing exactly who is wrong and who is right. And relinquishing that clarity, stepping into the more complex territory of genuine self-examination, can feel disorienting. But here is what lives on the other side of that discomfort. Here is what is waiting for you when you are willing to do this work. Freedom. Actual, genuine, biological, neurological freedom from patterns that have been running your life without your conscious consent. Because when you identify and heal a core wound, you change. Not theoretically, not philosophically, you literally change at the level of your nervous system. The neural networks that used to fire automatically in response to certain triggers begin to lose their power. The emotional reactions that used to hijack your behavior begin to have less grip on you. You begin to respond rather than react. You begin to choose rather than to be driven. And that is not a small thing. That is the entire game. The fifth and final way to handle people who hurt you is to invest that energy in creating an extraordinary future rather than analyzing an unchangeable past. And I want to talk about this in a very specific, very concrete way, because the instruction to focus on the future sounds simple. Everyone has heard it. Move on, let go, look forward. But very few people understand the actual mechanism by which this becomes possible. And without understanding the mechanism, the instruction remains empty. It remains a platitude that sounds good but produces nothing. Here is the mechanism. Your brain generates your experience of reality based on what it is expecting, based on the models it has built from your past experiences, based on the predictions it is constantly making about what is likely to happen next. And those predictions, those models, those expectations are built from the data of your history, which means if your history is primarily a record of pain, of betrayal, of disappointment, your brain will use that data to construct a future that looks a great deal like your past. It will filter out the evidence of possibility and amplify the evidence of threat. It will interpret ambiguous situations as dangerous rather than promising. It will steer you unconsciously away from the experiences that might challenge its predictions and toward the experiences that confirm them, because the brain, above all else, wants to be right. So the question becomes, how do you give your brain new data? How do you create a new model of the future when your history keeps supplying the old data? And the answer, which is simultaneously simple and demanding, is through the practice of mental rehearsal combined with elevated emotion, through the practice of spending deliberate, intentional time every single day, inhabiting the version of yourself that you are committed to becoming, not as a fantasy, not as wishful thinking, but as a genuine neurological rehearsal that your brain processes as real experience. When you vividly imagine a future in which you are free, in which you are whole, in which you are thriving, in which the wound that someone caused you has not only healed but has become the foundation of a wisdom and a compassion that makes you extraordinary, when you inhabit that vision with enough clarity and enough emotion that your body begins to produce the chemistry associated with it, something profound begins to happen. New neural connections form, new patterns of brain activation emerge, your nervous system begins to be trained toward a different expectation of reality, and over time, with consistent practice, the future you have been rehearsing in your mind begins to feel more real than the past you have been reliving. This is not the power of positive thinking in the superficial sense. This is neuroscience. This is the principle of neuroplasticity applied deliberately and purposefully to the task of self-transformation. The brain is not fixed. It is not locked into the patterns of the past. It is extraordinarily adaptive, extraordinarily capable of change, at every age, in every circumstance, under any condition. But that change requires effort, it requires intention, it requires the willingness to do the inner work consistently, not just when you feel motivated or when things are going well, but especially and most importantly when the pull of the old patterns is strongest. Because the pull will be strong. Make no mistake about that. There will be mornings when you wake up and the gravitational force of the old story is so powerful that it seems impossible to choose anything different. There will be moments when something triggers you back into the familiar pain and every cell in your body wants to go back to the old way of being, because that way is known, because the suffering is familiar, because in a strange and terrible way, we can become attached to our wounds because they have become part of how we identify ourselves. But every moment of that pull is also a moment of choice. And in that moment, you have the capacity to do something remarkable. You can become conscious. You can step out of the automated program and into deliberate awareness. You can observe what your mind is doing, observe what your body is feeling, and in that observation, create the space for a different choice, not a perfect choice, not always a graceful choice, but a choice that is moving in the direction of the self you are becoming rather than the self you have been conditioned to remain. I want to tell you something that I believe with every fiber of my understanding of how human beings work. The people who hurt you gave you something. I know that sounds almost unbearable to hear. I know it might trigger a resistance in you right now, but sit with it for a moment. The people who hurt you gave you an initiation. They gave you a forcing function. They gave you an experience so painful, so impossible to ignore, that it became the very catalyst that brought you to this moment of reckoning with yourself, of radical honesty about who you are and who you want to become. Every great transformation in human history, both individually and collectively, has been preceded by a period of profound disruption. The caterpillar does not elegantly and gently drift into becoming a butterfly. It completely dissolves. Every structure that defined it ceases to exist. And from that dissolution, from that total breakdown of the old form, something entirely new emerges, something that could not have existed without the complete destruction of what came before. That is the nature of profound transformation. And if you are here, if you have been through something that broke you open, if someone's actions left you questioning everything you thought you knew about yourself, about relationships, about the world, then you are in the dissolution. And the dissolution is not the end. The dissolution is the beginning. The question that matters most right now is not what was done to you. The question that matters most is what you are going to do with it. Are you going to allow this experience to become a perpetual loop of suffering that runs on autopilot for the rest of your life? Are you going to let one person's limited, fearful, pain-driven behavior define the ceiling of what you believe is possible for you? Or are you going to use this as the raw material for the most extraordinary work of your existence? Are you going to alchemize this pain into purpose? Are you going to allow this wound to become a wisdom that you carry into every relationship, every challenge, every moment of your life going forward? Because here is what I know about